St. John's played their first home game at Madison Square Garden under head coach Rick Pitino as they battled the Michigan Wolverines on Monday night. Not a positive outcome for the Johnnies as they fell to Michigan 89-73. So let's break down some St. John's hoops, and we're going to do it with New York Post college sports guru, my guy Zach Braziller, joins me now. Zach, how's it going?
Going well. Not going well for St. John's and their fans. Obviously, look, a rough one, pretty close game for about 17 minutes, and then Michigan went to a level St. John's couldn't reach. Look, Rick Pitino has basically said this is going to take time, that this team isn't quite ready yet to play the way he needs it to play, and we obviously saw that last night. The defense was bad. I was surprised he was more upset with the offense, which he felt got way too one-on-one, was selfish, and which, something he really hasn't seen a lot of. I think once Michigan kind of starts to build that lead, St. John's kind of try to do stuff on their own instead of playing within the team concept. But I do think Michigan's going to be a very good team this year. The point guard, Doug McDaniel, is terrific. I know they were picked 11th in the Big Ten. I think that was a gross mistake. I think Michigan's going to be a top 4, top 5 team in the league. So in the long run, it might not look as bad as it does right now, but clearly a bad first impression at the Garden.
Yeah, bad first impression at the Garden. But the folks were out there. St. John's fans were out there. It was a good vibe there at the Garden from what I saw. But I wanted to talk to this because you brought this up with me after the Stony Brook game on this week's episode when you came on with me on New York Got Game. Front court depth for the Johnnies. Was the lack of front court depth exposed in the loss to Michigan?
Yeah, look, Pitino addressed it. He said we don't have the front court depth that we really need. And it was to an extent. Look, the Michigan guards really hurt St. John's. Doug McDaniel had 26. Mari Burnett had 21. But some of that was from having to double in the post, and they start scrambling, and it leads to a lot of open shots. It was an issue. Now, look, Michigan's got a really good front line. They're deep. They're big. Most teams they're not going to face a lot of teams with that kind of front court. And I do expect them to play small a lot, especially when they get R.J. Luis, the transfer from UMass, who might be one of their best offensive players, back. He started practicing. He broke his hand on October 1st. Getting him back will help. I think you'll see him and Glenn Taylor a lot playing the 3 and the 4 and try to create mismatch problems for the other team. But, yeah, look, there's no question about it. It's an issue. If you count the exhibition, St. John's played 4 games. In the 2 games, Chris Ledlum, the transfer from Harvard, has played well. St. John's has looked good. In the 2 games he has not played well, they've been shaky. So right now, Ledlum is their starting power forward, and there really isn't a guy behind him to fill in that role. Right now, Ledlum is their X factor. When he plays well, they've looked like a different team.
Right, but to that point, they're having to rely on him a lot. He played a lot, Chris Ledlum, that is, played a lot on Monday night. You just mentioned Coach Pitino addressed the lack of front court depth after the game. So I guess my question is, how does St. John's address this issue going forward? Pitino was a bit critical of himself and how they put the roster together, saying they lacked the depth, but how do they address this going forward?
Like I said, I think they're going to play small a lot. I think Ledlum's the real backup option for him is going to be, going with Taylor and R.J. Luis at the 3 and the 4. I was a little surprised that they didn't look to kind of create mismatch problems for Michigan by going small. They went to Drissa Traore, behind Ledlum a little bit last night. But I think you're going to see a lot of that. And look, most teams aren't going to have the depth and the physicality that Michigan has up front. You go to the Charleston Classic, North Texas doesn't have it. Whether it's Dayton or LSU in the next game, they don't have it. Obviously, Houston, if they get to the final, is a different animal, a top 5 team. But I don't think it's going to be as much of a problem as maybe it was against Michigan. But look, they need more out of Ledlum. He's had 2 good games and 2 poor ones when you factor in those exhibitions. Joel Soriano, had finished with 15 and 9, but wasn't really involved too much when the game was within reach. Look, it was a bad performance. There's no doubt. It also came against a good team that has a lot of experience. That Pitino said afterward, Michigan looked like a team playing at a January level. St. John's looked like a team playing at an early November level, and that to me is kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, that was the difference in the game there. Now, beside the front court depth and issues there that we talked about, what are you going to keep your eye on with this team as they continue through the non-conference portion of their schedule and close out the month of November?
to me, it's poise. It's being able to take a punch. That to me was the biggest story of that game last night. It was a 2-point game with 2.5 minutes left. It felt like a very even back and forth game. And Michigan put on an 11-3 run to end the half, went up by 10, and St. John's really never responded. They kind of had a little bit of a glass jaw last night in that game, and that surprised me for such an experienced team. Now, look, it's a brand new team. You have a lot of guys that are now moving up to the high major level from the mid-level, and there are adjustments that are being made in terms of the quickness of the game, the length of the game. You saw that with Danis Jenkins. You see it with Ledlum. You see it with Jordan Dingle. These are guys that are adjusting to maybe a faster game, and it's going to take time. But that, to me, is the biggest thing. Is that I felt like they lost their poise last night when stuff started really going wrong. They weren't together enough, and that's something that I think you will see as the season goes along. I'm really interested to see how this team responds in the Charleston Classic. They're going to be a favorite over North Texas on Thursday. They should win that game. They'll probably be a favorite whether it's Dayton or LSU in the second game. I think it's important for this team's confidence to respond here and have a good weekend down in Charleston. I'm not saying they have to win the tournament, but I think getting to the final is very important, and I think it's something they should be able to do.
All right, we will see how the Johnnies do down there in Charleston in the tournament, and if they can keep that poise or build on that through the month of November. That is Zach Braziller, New York Post sports reporter, college basketball guru, joining us here. Zach, thank you for the time. We'll talk again soon.
Of course.